So I'm super excited for this podcast because I have one of my good friends here and talk about the ultimate mompreneur, if I even said that correct, is Lindsay. And when I talk about an inspiring story, I think hers is the definition of that. She literally has done everything for her kids, like that's been her why. And she has been the ultimate success creating business after business. And it's really, really motivating. So super excited to have you on, Lindsay.
Thank you
Yes,
for having me
welcome.
here. Thank you guys.
So why don't we take it kind of back a little bit to the beginning of your story? So you were married, you had kids, and you helped your husband at the time build a business that he had.
Correct.
And that was like a roofing business, I
Roofing and
believe.
construction. Yeah.
And so you kind of helped him do that. And then that marriage ended, and you were a nurse at the time.
Nurse practitioner. Yep.
And so you were working at a hospital, working like 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I obviously know her story really well. So I'll let you tell it.
Yeah. So I've been a nurse practitioner for more years than I'd probably like to count right now. But yes, I was married, and when he retired from his previous profession, we started a roofing and construction company. I actually knew nothing about running a business or roofing, period. But we kind of figured that out. And shortly after that, we went through a pretty bad divorce. And it was really tough, at the time. But knowing that that was coming, I was working 24-hour shifts as a neonatal nurse practitioner. And so I knew, like, being a single mom with three boys, I needed to be home and be present and, be able to be emotionally available for them to go through that really tough transition that is it's hard for every kid to go through, but we had a particularly rough situation to come out of. So I was just trying to think of different ways to what I could do, and I really always had an interest in becoming a nurse injector. But the tricky part about that is, we go to nursing school, nurse practitioner school, and we have all this clinical work and we have training. And so we come out like fully prepared to take like a job, right? In a hospital or a clinic or wherever it is that you choose to go. And so I started training with some of the best that I knew were doing, injections and whatnot. And then I just decided to go on my own. And I started off in like a salon suite. I knew nothing about business. I always say I'm like, I'm a medical provider. Like, I have been figuring this entrepreneur and business thing out as I go.
And you've done pretty good
I have done
so
very well
far.
for myself. Yes. So that was 6 years ago. And now I am in a large space with 7 treatment rooms, and we have 7 providers. And so now I am the CEO of Hush Medspa, as well as our lead nurse practitioner injector.
Amazing. And I kind of want to bring back to something you said because it's something that every person, I think that's one been on this podcast, but every person that I talk to that's successful says, which is that you found somebody to help you and mentor you. So you found another injector, which is what you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you did what? You got advice from them, you follow them. Like,
Yeah.
how did that process work for you?
It even started like way more basic than that. I went to somebody who I respected a lot in the industry, Kim Welch. She totally took a leap of faith on me, and she was like, you know what? You have the personality for it. You're obviously very skilled at what you do, taking care of premature babies, which is what I think makes me a really good nurse practitioner injector, because I have a really steady, gentle hand, you know.
Yeah.
And so my very first training was with her, and she trained me for an 8-hour day, just on the basics of starting to learn how to inject. And then from there, I just started following, like, on Instagram, um, like the biggest accounts, like worldwide, right? So I went all the way to Norway, and I trained with Julie Horn, and she trained me on my lip filler technique, and she's amazing, and she was super sweet and kind. And then I shadowed in the consultant clinic in London, and that's kind of where I started my first part of my business, because I saw the way that they were running their business, and they had like international, multiple injection boutiques. That's all they did. They really barely did any like neurotoxin. It was all filler and a lot of like filler corrections. So basically, yes, I just found out who was doing the best, because if you want to become a leader and a top, provider in your industry, you need to really kind of mimic everybody else that's succeeding and who's being respected, and then you want to learn from them and then let them mentor you. So
Yeah.
that's basically what I did. I just found who was doing the best and paid for myself to be trained by them.
And so when you were at this point, though, when, your previous relationship had ended and you were working as a nurse practitioner, what was it that drove you to want to start your own business and kind of pave your own way rather than just working for one of these successful professionals? Because, I mean, you had the skills, you had the training. And, I mean, as a nurse practitioner, it's not like you're working at Wendy's. You had a great income. So what made you want to branch out and start your own business at that point?
Well, I think it's a lot of things. Number one, I just really wanted to be present. You're gonna make me start crying very early
That's the goal.
in this interview.
That's the goal.
But my 3 boys are like, they're my life. They're
Yeah.
amazing. And I'm a woman trying to raise 3 men, right?
Yeah.
And that's a tough job in itself.
Sure.
So I really wanted to be a role model for them and show them that, like, you don't have to have every opportunity available, but hard work and determination and the discipline, you can create whatever life you want to create. So and I'm very open with my kids about that. And, I don't have to like get on them a lot about when they do something wrong, right?
Yeah.
My correction with them is, gosh, I'm disappointed that you made that decision. And they are always like, that's like hard for them.
Yeah.
They don't want to disappoint mom, right?
For sure.
So they're my why ultimately. But also, like, I just wanted to show other women that were coming out of these type of relationships that, like, that's not the end. That doesn't have to be your story. You can pave your own way. You can make your own way. You can do whatever you want to do. And it just takes a lot of work, but you just can't quit. Like, every day I want to quit, right? Like, in the beginning, not now, but in the beginning, every day I was like, this is tough. I should just go back to a great salary, wonderful benefits, at the hospital. But that was just ultimately not where I saw our life going, because then I don't have the time freedom. And also, like, what entrepreneur really has time freedom? That's kind of a joke.
Yeah.
But it's only in the beginning. Like, I feel I'm in year 6 and I'm like, okay, it's starting to lessen up.
Yeah,
like,
you
I'm
start to
able,
earn that time freedom for sure.
the sweat equity is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as a parent, I think that's really incredible that you did that in that way, because you see so many parents telling their kids, you can be whatever you want to be and you can do whatever you want to do. But I think it's a whole nother level to really practice what you preach and show them that. So,
absolutely.
Good for
it really
you.
is do as I do, not do as I say.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I think the other important part of your story in particular that is so inspiring is that it wasn't an easy transition for you.
No.
That your divorce and that time period, like you didn't have support. You were completely on your own. You were starting from zero.
Yes.
Like, no house, no furniture, no support, single mom trying to figure out how to raise her children on her own, starting a brand new career. And your why was so big that it was like by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I'm going to figure it out, and I think that's such a big thing is like your why was so big.
Yeah.
And people have to have their why. For you, obviously it's your children, which keeps you going.
Yeah.
But you made it happen, like regardless of anything that was in your way. You weren't going to let anything stop you.
Yes. I think like that tenacity is like the ultimate character in an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, because honestly, like, I've had different revenue or avenues that I've taken Hush Medspa, and I've been able to reassess pretty quickly and be like, this isn't quite working out. We're going to have to reevaluate and pivot a different way. But just like the tenacity to just never stop. That didn't work. That didn't mean you failed. Like, I saw a really cool meme the other day where it was like like a target for the gun.
Yeah.
And like there was a whole bunch of bullets around the bullet, like the
bullseye.
the bullseye.
Yes.
And they didn't hit it. There was like 15 hits around it, and then there was one, but then the other one was 0 shots, and it was saying like, this isn't failure, this is failure.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with like my journey. Like, I failed my way forward, and I will always be the first one to say, I'm not sure about that, but I will figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't know that answer, but I will be right back with that answer.
Well, and think about how valuable of a lesson that is that you're showing your kids that too, because the kids growing up, they're going to fail in their first date. They're going to fail in high school. They're going to fail in sports. And they're going to get to see that it's not really about perfection. It's just about constant growing. So
Yes.
that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, I mean, I love hearing that, you're a mom raising three boys. And for me, I'm a brand new dad about to raise a little girl.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for people like me who are, really, really busy as an entrepreneur? And obviously I want to spend every single moment that I can with my kids, but what are some good tips on time management there?
I think just present,
Yeah.
like being so present when they're do get your time, right? The other day we were running, my youngest son, Graham, and I were going to Walmart, and we were going to pick up a few things. And he's just telling me about his day. And honestly, I was kind of listening, but I was also kind of like unwinding from the day at work. And then all of a sudden he looked at me, he's like, "How was your day, Mom?" And I'm like, like, okay, like he just poured his heart out to me about my day. And I was halfway listening, but the only thing he really wanted to know was how was my day.
Yeah.
And it was just
Oh,
a really good, right? He's so
he is
sweet.
so sweet.
Like, and that's the thing. Like there's a special bond between moms and dads. I mean, moms and their boys, and then daughters and their fathers. It's like
Yeah.
it's really truly like their first love.
Yeah.
Like they really do have that feeling
Yeah.
for you, and she'll always probably want to just make dad proud,
Yeah.
right? So whatever you can do to just be like super present and understanding, because also like I have a 17-year-old son, and he's such a good kid.
Yeah.
But like we've had this open relationship to where I'm like, you come to me first. Like if you make a big mistake, you come to me first. Like
Yeah.
let's talk it out. Let's figure out how we're gonna fix it. What can we do to resolve it? Like what is your accountability? And so now I don't really worry about him.
Yeah.
Like I know like Braylon's gonna make a good decision
Yeah.
because we've practiced that.
Right.
Yeah.
And if he needs you, he'll come talk to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a joke because it's a little bit hindering because he's like he doesn't want anybody to do anything except for mom. Like
Yeah.
something as simple like my mom was going to bring his some football pads up to the school, and he was like, no, I need my mom to bring the football pads.
Yeah.
So, but it also like, being a nurse practitioner, like that's kind of how we are. We just always want to help. So
Yeah.
I love it, but at the same time,
I think that also is because they've watched your journey. You've
Yeah.
been so open with them about your journey and your path that you've been super open and honest. And so that translates to them,
Yeah.
and you can see that in your relationship with them,
Yes.
especially when I see you guys.
Yeah.
Now, Lindsay, also like there's a ton of nurse practitioners out there, and there's a ton of people that are injectors,
Mhm.
but you have created a very, very successful med spa. So, like, what do you think the habits you did or the things that you did differently to be that percentage of success that those other people aren't?
Mhm. I think from a skill set, I'm just very honest, and I always focus on educating. Like a lot of my patients will come in, they're like, okay, this is what I know to do. This is what I want to do, but I know you're probably going to say no. Because I'm very quick to be like, that's actually not what you need. I'm a root cause provider. Like, so that's my thought. When they come in with an issue, I'm always like, let's take a step back. You're seeing what happened. Let's figure out why that happened, and let's fix that first. So I think that's why I have such natural looking, good results, is because I'm not doing any of the crazy radical things. And a lot of new practitioners think that they need to do that, jump on these, Instagram trends. And you're like, okay, but let's think, does it really work? Right. So from a skill set, that and the fact that I'm constantly learning, I'm still training with people. Like I've been doing it. I actually have an academy, the Lindsay Gail Academy, that I train other people to do these injections, but I'm still seeking out more knowledge. So you just never can stop learning.
Yeah.
From a CEO standpoint, I think I just have that vulnerability with my staff. Like I'll be quick to be like, I made a mistake. I didn't know, but I'm going to fix that. Or I'm honest with them about like, this month we can't order all that extra product. We're going to have to kind of get by, like, and just being open with them. And so my staff, like I have a very low turnover compared to most med spas because my staff is like my family. Like they're my girls. We're very close. And so I think that is probably the two things that set me apart from a skill set and being a CEO.
Yeah. And I feel like that translates to any business that somebody's trying to build. If you're not getting better, you're actually going backwards because
yeah.
everybody else is constantly trying to get better, make more, do more, grow bigger, grow faster, right? And so it's like if you're not doing that, you're actually falling behind.
Mhm.
And then also as a leader, you have to do that because you want to bring up other leaders. You want to
Right.
like expand. And that's another thing that you did, which is create an academy for nurse injectors. And we have a similar passion for helping women because you were like, look, I was in a position, I had nothing. I had to figure this business out on my own. And you're like, I want to help other women have this avenue. So talk a little bit about your academy and like
Yeah.
how that came about.
Yeah. So I first started training, just like this, the injections, like the skills. I started doing that, and I didn't create a separate company. I just kind of did that as my on my own. And but then once I expanded from my smaller, so my growth pattern was I started off in a salon suite, right? And then I got into like a 2-room medical office building, and then a medical office space in a medical building. And then I recently, like within the last year and a half, expanded to a really large space. And that transition was so unique because a lot of, like in my med spa, there's 28 med spas in a 5-mile radius. That's a lot of competition
Yeah.
because it's a really fun part of nursing, right? It's so much more fun than working in a hospital. So everybody's chasing that bright shining leaf, right? And they're wanting to do that.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to be able to help other women do this because it's been so life changing for me.
Yeah.
I have like a few different categories of the academy. Like I have strictly skills. I have an externship, which I actually love the most because that is like a certain time period where a nurse or nurse practitioner can shadow me and train with me for that amount of hours. And then she can take that recommendation letter and say, like, sort of like a clinical that we would have gotten in nursing school that they don't have for esthetician or for nurse injectors. And that was also a little spiteful because I remember when I was looking into, programs for, because I'm also getting my family nurse practitioner. So I'm getting my second master's degree right now. And I spoke to a lady who was the director of a nursing program. And I said to her, we really should probably start a program for nurse injectors because it's going to blow up. And this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And she was like, that is never going to happen. And I was like, on my list. That's on my list. So I started doing that. And then also like how to build a med spa. And that's like an online program where I keep accountability and I teach them step by step how to grow.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's still a business. Still got
It's a
payroll,
business. Yeah.
taxes,
Yeah.
orders,
Yeah.
not including. So you're actually still working in your business while you're still building and expanding.
Very much so.
And people don't realize like how much that genuinely takes. And you're also a single mom of 3 boys. And I can tell you from personal experience, she's at every practice,
Yeah.
every game, right? So for me, right, I mean, I have my dog Messy, which I love to be a part of, every activity he's has to do, every walk. But I can't imagine as an entrepreneur how to divvy up my time like that and still be able to have a successful business. So for you, if you had advice for other single moms that are like, look, I want to build something, but I still want to be present with my kids, how would you advise them that you do that with your days?
Yeah. So I'm very structured, right? I have to keep a very structured routine. And then I just had to learn how to like turn it off after 6 p.m. Like I finish seeing my patients 4 days a week at 6 p.m. And then when I go home, like on my personal, like Instagram or TikTok, like I don't follow a lot of injectors on that because I totally disconnect. Because even if I'm sitting at my home and scrolling like mindlessly after my boys go to sleep, I'm trying to keep that part out of my head. And then when I'm at home, it's more about spending time with the boys, getting them their homework, getting them to their things, cooking them dinner, getting them in bed, listening about how their day was.
Yeah.
But just trying to learn how to be present. So I had to learn how to compartmentalize all of it, like my personal time. And like I'm a girl's girl.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriends have gotten me through everything. I love them.
Yeah.
So that's important to me to prioritize time with them every once in a while. But like my workouts, my self-care, my home life, you just have to keep them in their boxes and treat them accordingly.
Yeah. So focus. Like
Focus.
you gotta
Laser focused.
be focused. When I tell you, I don't know how, I think she has more than 24 hours
Yeah.
because by the time I'm like done with something, she's done 10 million things. I'm like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
But it is inspiring because there's a lot of single moms that still have a desire to start a business. They still have a desire to make things happen, for their future to
Mhm.
so their kids could like see these goals come
Yeah.
into like fruition in their life, you know? And for you, you made it happen through all odds. So I think like your
Right.
story is so much more inspiring than just somebody that's just out there like, yeah, I had a dream to do this, right?
Mhm.
But you had pretty much everything against you,
Oh yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
But talking about like focus and tenacity, I think those are the two things we keep hearing over and over and over
Definitely.
about how to build a successful business,
Right.
right? And then constantly learning. So for you, right now you have the med spa, you just opened your school. Like, what are the next things that you have for your goals? Like, what's the next thing on the list on the vision board?
I would like to open a few more locations, a few more clinics, probably locally. Like DFW is such a large space of land,
Yeah.
but there's plenty of room. Um, but also, I really want to diversify my financial portfolio. Like
Yeah.
this 2024, my focus was to have multiple streams of income, whether it's something small and maybe not quite so glamorous, you know, um, businesses that I own that would support if any of the other ones went down.
Yeah.
Because I think that spreading it out after you have to focus
Yeah.
building something, and that like that's an active growth period, right? So
Totally.
you grow and then you scale, right? But in the scaling period, then it's easier to look at other options to add to your
Right.
plate that fit in with it, that aren't going to take away from my time, but like the revenue that we're making now, let's make it make money,
Yeah.
right? And it's not always about making money, but it's about financial freedom and like my children and I's future,
Yeah.
like retirement. What does that look like? I can't be injecting forever,
Right.
right? And my son is about to go play football in college. That was always my very, very, very first goal was I wanted to be able to take a step back once he started playing football,
Right.
like away, because I don't miss games, and that's like super important for him and me because I feel like I've kind of put in some of that work, right?
Yeah.
Um, so just looking forward and figuring out other ways to go.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think one thing people would love to hear is for someone as busy as you're making it to every practice, every game, you're making it to the gym, you're making time with your girlfriends, you're running your business, you're opening others. How do you actually plan your schedule? Meaning, like, do you use a Google Sheets document? Do you use Google Calendar? I know you're not just like flying by the seat of your pants every day.
No.
No way that would work. So, how do you actually plan your
I'm
schedule?
so old school. I'm still paper. Like
Nice.
color coordinated paper. And like everybody in my family and all of my business and all my different things have like a color. Like obviously, anything related to Hush is pink in my calendar,
Nice.
and so then I can quickly glance at it and I'm like, okay, this is what's coming up. And that is like for like events that aren't always the same.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that I would say for that creates success for me personally is the same thing. It's consistency. Like
Mhm.
even trying to like change up the time that I go to the gym.
Yeah.
It takes me a couple weeks to get it back in because that's not
Yeah.
like my body is just used to it.
Showing up
And
at
it's
a
like
specific
it's
time.
just like
Yeah.
second nature. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going, as opposed to like waking up and being like, what are we going to do today? No, I know what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
Getting the boys to school. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to work.
Yeah. Because then you don't have to actually plan it and think
Right.
about it throughout the day. It's just like 6 a.m. we do this, 8 a.m. we do this.
Yeah.
Got it. I love that.
Compounding daily activities is so important.
Yes.
Another really great thing that you do, Lindsay, I think that's made you really successful is branding. You're really, really great at like branding, and you figured out early on, like, hey, I'm a single mom. I don't have this huge marketing budget starting this brand new business. Like, how do I market myself? How do I get my brand out there? Like you said, you have a lot of competition around you.
Mhm.
And when I say genuinely, you have the best med spa in Dallas. You genuinely do. But you've done such a great job branding yourself, not only with like the knowledge, but just like creatively.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit how branding has done for your business.
Well, I think to begin with, like we are our own brand, right? So
Mhm.
like everything that I'm talking about, I'm doing, I'm breathing, I'm living, I'm actively having done to myself. Like a lot of patients will come in, well, what have you done? I'm like, well, I'm doing all the things,
Yeah.
right? All the things. Like, but like when it comes to branding, like Hush Med Spa, I actually don't know how it happened. It just kind of naturally evolved. I also have like an amazing practice manager. Paige is like my right hand, like she's my everything. If she was to leave tomorrow, we'd all be like, because that's the other thing I've learned to do is you have to delegate. The higher you get, the more delegation you have to give.
Right.
And you have to really trust those people to do it. But I hired her straight out of finishing college, and she was a marketing degree. So she kind of had that mindset. And so she was a lot for my branding on purpose. But like, I feel like the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way I educate my patients is all part of that branding. And sticking on brand. Like, I wouldn't ever want to go out and go have my lips done some crazy radical way and then say, come into me, I'm going to give you very natural looking, beautiful lips. They're going to be like, In fact, one of the things I say is, this might be controversial, but I'm like, if your injector looks crazy to you, that's typically what she thinks looks aesthetically beautiful, and you may or may not turn out that way.
Yeah.
Like, you have to kind of be able to say no and have discernment in that, and like just say when is when.
Gotcha.
And that's particularly hard for me when my really young girls come in, like their lower 20s, and they're wanting all these fillers and things done. And I'm like, I mean, there's been a couple times I've teared up because I'm like, you're gorgeous, but you are literally dealing with filters on social media. You're dealing with like way more than we dealt with when we were going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is just hard for them to hear the no, because they're like, I want this filter. And I'm like, oh, babe, no, that's not, you're beautiful. We're not going to do that. So I think branding goes a lot deeper than just like colors of your logo and the aesthetic of your brand.
Well, I think what you just said is a huge part of your brand too. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of, obviously I'm not very well versed in the beauty world, but I'm sure there's a ton of places that when that 20-year-old comes in and asks for that, they just be like, yep, put it on your card. Let's do it.
Yes.
So I think that really speaks to your character to be able to say, no, even though I would make money and stand to gain from saying yes to you doing this, I'm going to say no because I feel like it's honestly best for you.
Yeah.
So,
and the world has changed now. Like social media is so important to your business, and it comes down to being genuine. Like you said, like you actually do what you are saying, what you're selling. Like you are the poster child for that, And like when it comes to entrepreneurship, you are also the poster child for like anybody that wants to be a mom and like is trying to start a business. I'm like, you need to talk to my friend Lindsay. Like it doesn't matter what business, because it's universal, the steps that it takes to get there. Like you found a mentor, you paid the money to make it happen, you put in the work to make it happen, you stayed focused, and you kept your why really, really strong. And now you're teaching other people how to do that. And it's like really, really awesome and inspiring. But let's like talk about still going back to your why, right? Because if you don't find that, I feel like you can't figure out your direction. You're going to falter because your business wasn't easy along the way. So if you didn't have that why, right, during those difficult times, you probably wouldn't have stuck it out.
Sure.
Like, so I feel like people need to figure out what their why is, because it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy.
No. And it's truly being an entrepreneur. It's truly like one step forward and then you take two back. And those two back are really hurtful. Like you're like, we were just there.
So
and then
close.
you're like, oh, that's it. I'm giving it up, going back to the hospital. And then you're like, I'm not.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't is really just because my why is so stellar and so laser focused that like every time I want to quit, I'm like, what am I going to go home and tell these three beautiful boys?
Yeah,
like,
that you gave
Mom,
up?
I'm
No
done.
way.
I give up. So then when they're like tired and they don't want to go to practice, well, you gave up.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think that is the most fail-proof way to be successful, is to be so focused on your why.
Yeah. I love that. I was going to say, I know exactly where she would be if she didn't have her why. You'd probably be doing what you were trained to do, the easiest. So you'd probably be working a very, very simple job in the medical field, right? Because that's what you went to school for. But you're just accomplishing so much more and setting such a great example for your kids.
And even like at any point, like a year or two in, I could have very easily gotten a job injecting at another med spa.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't have been the CEO. I still wouldn't have been the business owner. I still wouldn't be building something. I'd still be building somebody else's something, right? And so, again, like, yes, failing and stopping and is always great, but like pivoting does
Yeah.
not mean stopping.
Well, and if you took that route too, you'd be saying, "Sorry, honey, I can't make it to practice or game because my
Yeah.
boss said I can't today."
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, that's the trade-off.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then you also talked about like your team.
Mm.
And that's another thing that's really important when you're growing a business or an entrepreneur is like you can't do it alone. Like
No.
you do have to have a really good team of people. And people come and go and that does hurt sometimes.
Mhm.
But talk about the things that you look for in developing other leaders in your business. What are the key things that you think make them successful leaders?
So it's interesting because it's a lot of personality, right? Because when you're in an all women business, and I learned that from being in an all women NICU, like
Yeah.
most of the nurses and nurse practitioners in a neonatal intensive care are women,
Yeah.
right? So I already knew that big personalities sometimes don't always mesh. And for me, like I have come out of such a toxic marriage and relationship that my business has to be completely cancer free,
Yeah.
like zero toxicity, like the first hint of it, and I'm like, can't do that.
Yeah,
Right?
you got to go.
I can't do it. Like,
Yeah.
and it's hard for me to let people go, but it's funny because a lot of the times they'll let themselves go.
Yeah.
And it hurts. It hurts because it feels like a personal, like, oh, she quit on me. She left me. But it's like, I know that that's God being protecting me from my
Yeah.
peace. And so when it comes to building a team, like the first thing I look at is loyalty, integrity. Obviously, they have to be really good at what they do. But they have to buy into the brand too, right? And so my providers that are here they've been here for a long time with me and grown with me, and they've seen the struggle. And honestly, like the hardest part of my business growth was expanding from the medical office building that was already there to full construction, 2,500 square feet. Like it was a shell. It was a very expensive project, which I didn't really think would be that expensive, but it just keeps going. But also it's something you wouldn't know,
Yeah.
right? And something I didn't ask my mentors.
Yeah.
And if I asked them, they probably would have if I was to tell somebody else, I would say find a building already with the shell
Yeah.
and then decorate it the way you want it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to save a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I always say, I'm like, if there's one thing I know I've done is I probably made every mistake. So I figured out, right? But they've seen me grow and they've seen me pour into them. And so we really, really are like a family.
Yeah.
And they've mentored me. I've mentored them. We've grown each other.
That's awesome.
It's really important.
And what are some things you do with your team to kind of continue keeping your relationship strong with them?
We do team building events. Like we'll go out for a pool day, or we'll go out for brunch, or we had a Christmas dinner where we went out and we try to do things that are outside of work. So we establish a friendship, because it's really hard to like be disloyal to like a friend, right? It's super easy to do that to a boss.
Yeah.
You could be like, I don't want to be here tomorrow, and just not show up. But
Yeah.
if it's somebody you generally care about and have a relationship, you're like, do I really want to do that? I don't think so. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it, right?
Well, I think that's really valuable because, like, throughout the workday, most of your interactions with people are transactional.
Right.
Even if you love each other, a lot of times, me and Maria talk probably 17 times a day.
Yeah.
But it's very rarely like, how are you doing right now? Typically it's like we're both like in productivity mode.
Right.
So we kind of skip the please and thank you, just like get straight to the point,
Mhm.
So I think that's incredibly valuable to make sure you're spending that time outside of work. Too.
Yeah. We also do like quarterly Hush Medspa events, like
Yeah.
where it's like all our customers can come. And I think that builds loyalty with our customers
Yeah,
too, because they look
sure.
forward to like, when's the next
Mhm.
Hush event,
Yeah.
because it's a party, we have a good time. And then we're not talking about treatments as much. We're just kind of getting to know each other.
Right.
And so that creates loyalty within your customer base
The
as
other
well.
thing I noticed you do is like you include your team in everything. So like
Yes.
if you have a branding shoot, you're showing off your team. You're not hiring models. You're like, no, I want to show them off like they're a part of this. And making people realize they're a part of this
Totally
is
true.
like a game changer, because like you said, if they're just like feeling like they're working for some boss, like
Yeah.
how are you going to help create leaders? How are you going to help change their lives? And like we always talk about like how our lives have been changed in business, and how can we help other women especially that have
Mhm.
gone through the same things we have? How can we help them, And I feel like if you don't involve them, like, why do they feel like their purpose is to be there?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't love social media. I
Yeah.
don't really like to be in front of a camera. I kind of have to make myself because I am the brand, right?
Yeah.
But I recently just kind of the growth of this last year was so hard that I kind of backed off. I didn't just wasn't in the mood to be on the camera and be
Yeah.
happy like all the time. I was just like, you guys just do it. But then I had a new patient come in, and they're like, "Oh, you're the owner?" And I was like, I looked at Paige and I was like, "Okay, all right, all right, I'll be back on social media," because we had poured so much work into like the other providers that kind of fell off the page, which is great, but like you said, it needs to be all encompassing and everybody needs to be involved. And when you feel like you're part of a team, you don't want to let your other teammates down,
Yeah.
right? You want to hold your end of the bargain. You want to make sure that you're building and growing as much as the next person. And if she's killing it and you're just kind of hanging on to her coattails, you're like, I really need to pick it up.
Yeah.
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 I love that.
Yeah.
Lindsay, I think like the main thing, especially because I'm not a parent, so I can't, relate. Maybe one day soon, but for all the moms out there, what would you say are the top 3 things for any mom that is an entrepreneur, that wants to be an entrepreneur, and that maybe is like struggling to have the success that you've had? What would the 3 pieces of advice that you would give to them?
Oh, that's a loaded question. 3 things. Well, number one, um, accountability, being honest with your kiddos, because if you're not keeping them as a priority and they see you working really hard at doing something and then they feel neglected, then they're going to resent the business and it's just really creating a negative pattern. So I will always say like, oh, I'm going to be home late tonight because mommy has to do this networking event. So being open and being honest with them. And then on top of it, but like, don't feel like you can't be a good mom if you're not feeling good about yourself. So you really have to prioritize yourself. Like I learned that like in the last few years, like my working out and like my girl time, it's necessary for me to be a really good mom
Yeah.
and a good, business owner. And then just never give up. Like even if you feel like you're just barely figuring it out, it's just another day. You just got to get up and do it again over and over and over until you get to where you're trying to get to.
Yeah. Well, Lindsay, you motivate me every single day. So I'm so happy to hear your story and to have everybody else hear it. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Lindsay, thank you so much. And if people want to get in touch with you, want to learn more about you, want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably Instagram. So my business page is hushmedspa.com. My personal page is Lindsay Aesthetic NP.
Lindsay
Is it
Aesthetic,
Aesthetic
NP.
See,
Okay,
that's how I am on social media. But or the Lindsay Gail Academy.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us today. Your story was incredible.
Thank you.